You mentioned when you were talking about gluconeogenesis, you triggered something in my mind. I wanted to ask you. I forgot. So when you're in nutritional ketosis or fasting induced ketosis, you need to make glucose. You still need glucose. Your red blood cells have no mitochondria, and your red blood cells are important, right?
Absolutely.
So you're making glucose through this process that you mentioned called gluconeogenesis. And
glucose does not bottom out. It's not like one or the other. You're pulling fuel source from.
So I wanted to ask you about how has anyone looked at where this so if you are on a pretty strict ketogenic diet or whatever it is you're doing to get into ketosis, does the liver use glycerol, lactate, both as a primary source to make glucose, and is that glucose predominantly going to red blood cells, or does it go has that been looked at to see where so red blood cells are they getting enough of their glucose? Are they
I think so. I mean, you'd probably have to severely calorie restrict. In those cases, you could become anemic or impair your immune system is also too highly dependent to some extent on glucose and glutamine. So you have lactate, you have the glycerol backbone, the fats. Yes. So glycerol backbone of fatty acids, or of triglycerides for sure, lactate, yes, and amino acids. Gluconeogenic amino acids in your diet also are a source of glucose. Gluconeogenic amino acids in your skeletal muscle. Your muscle is constantly being broken down, remodeling, especially in athletes. So they're all sources. The contribution of each of these gluconeogenic sources in each individual probably varies tremendously. But I would say that glucose is always going to be there, and the body ensures through very powerful homeostatic mechanisms that your glucose is going to stay, rarely go below 3, maybe 2.5 millimolar might drop to 4 and stay within a pretty tight range. But what does change considerably from a glucose regulation standpoint is the insulin. Insulin bottoms out to the point where I've seen enough blood work to show that in many cases insulin and IGF-1 is below the reference range. So insulin signaling goes down. So if insulin's down, all those insulin pathways that you see on your flow charts are all going to be suppressed, and IGF-1 obviously it's going to be lower. And I think that's a really important to consideration to factor in as it relates to cancer therapeutics, cancer biology, cancer prevention even, but also from the perspective of muscle metabolism. And I think by keeping insulin signaling sort of low, you upregulate factors that make you more responsive to insulin. So I think, and ketones can kind of compensate for a deficiency in insulin. And that was a lot of the, reviews by Richard Veach talked about that. And the ketones themselves are anti-catabolic or protein sparing. So if you're in a state of ketosis, you're protecting gluconeogenic amino acids in skeletal muscle from being degraded. So you are, as a metabolic fuel, but you're also, there's evidence that you're inhibiting proteolytic enzymes and pathways that would otherwise be chewing up your muscle tissue over time.
That's super cool.
So it's anti-catabolic. Yeah, so ketones are anti-catabolic in that
So
regard.
then you're probably not using, the gluconeogenic amino acids as much.
From skeletal muscle, not as much. So the idea is that you want to keep pumping in the fat too. If you're on a ketogenic diet, if it's not sufficient with ample amounts of fat, you're probably much more catabolic. So you want to ensure that you're using the fatty acids, go to the mitochondria, they're used as fuel, they keep their mitochondria happy, as do the ketones, and then the glycerol is kind of shuttled. And it's a very nice, kind of an elegant pathway to ensure that we have that flux of glucose for vital functions like the red blood cells and there's a number of neurotransmitters and hormones that require, a baseline level of insulin or glucose to be used.